All right, welcome back. Today's going to be a little bit different. Josh and I had intended, to do a discussion about fashion and grooming or style and grooming rather, and we will at some point do that. I normally have notes that I prepared, but today is going to be speaking from more of the heart. I'm going to talk about some challenges and some things that have happened personally and how they're relevant to a lot of the things that I think men face. And if you read the bio that I have on the website for this show, there's a couple of things that stand out. One is I don't know how you felt about doing the show, but I've always felt like this is a platform that I'm grateful to have and to share a message. And it's one that we often come with tips and advice and knowledge. And from time to time, it can be good to take stock in the advice that you should also be obtaining from it. So, given the challenges and some of the things that I've faced, and as a consequence of those being my own decisions, it's only fair to use the platform and to come and share a message of, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I face struggles just like everybody else does. So, in full disclosure, I have a natural proclivity for being overly competitive, and really keeping the pedal to the metal, if you will. And there's been a theme that I've been hearing a lot more about, which is this striving for balance, to achieve balance in your life, and anything in the extremes is too much. I don't really know much different. It's really how I'm wired. But particularly in the last, I would say 10 days, 2 weeks, some things have happened at work and it just in my personal life that you kind of feel like the chips are starting to stack against you. And one falls, and then another one falls, and then another one falls, and then pretty soon it becomes really challenging. So nothing terrible has happened. No crimes were committed. Nobody was hurt. But it's been an extremely challenging couple of weeks for me personally in the last two, and I felt it was just right to come here and share that and be honest and open about it. So as I mentioned, it was. When I look back at some of the decisions that I made, they were all based on, achieving a certain metric and obtaining a certain goal. And my proclivity for overperformance, I guess you could say, which applies to overtraining, overworking out, just doing things overly too much. When I look back at some decisions that I made, I'm now understanding and seeing the fruits of those things. And I wouldn't even necessarily consider them fruits because I've had a couple of goals that I've fallen short on. And some things kind of crumble, I guess, if you will, professionally. And, it's not something I'm terribly proud about, but it's something I need to be honest about. And what I really struggle with personally is achieving balance. So with the pedal to the metal all the time, I really struggle with taking stock in what I've achieved, and a reward, kind of treating myself based on those things that I've achieved. And just a couple of things that have happened specifically with work. I work in sales, and I've been really, really putting my nose to the grindstone about putting deals together. And it seems like within the past 2 weeks, I've continuously been decline, and then there are other things too. I won't get into details, but it's been extremely frustrating and very taxing on me mentally. And this is in no way a victim mindset. It's more just my overperformance and my criticalness of myself has really backfired, and it can afford you some really good things. Being hyper competitive and being an achiever and an overachiever can afford you some really good things, and that I have, but it has a backside, and it can backfire. And I think that the balance that I struggle with most is taking stock and taking inventory in that. I know that this is something that guys really face. There's almost this archetypal ideal that I think is tangible in terms of performance and achievement. And I have such a white knuckle grip on goals and things that I think I often don't create a space for them to actually manifest in my life. You know, you can hold on to something so tight that you actually push it away.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to have a conversation tonight with you about balance and about ways that we can look for that and to achieve that. You're a high performance guy yourself. You have a family of your own. You're a physician assistant, and you have a lot of irons in the fire. And it's a challenge that I just need to be open and honest about. And I've really struggled, honestly.
Yep.
It's been tough. And rather than come here and tell you guys how to be at your best, it's important that you know that I'm not always at mine, and that I fall short a number of times. Is this something that you experience, that you have some detail and some experience around in your own personal life, Josh?
Yeah, definitely, man. And I think one of the big things is that, you know, we all get really wrapped up kind of in like these leadership books and all these guys who are super high performers, and they put out these 180 to 250 page little manuals on how you can improve your life and do well. But there's not any of those guys. Anybody who's super successful would be completely full of it if they were to tell you that they never failed, right? And I think it's going to happen in every aspect of life that we try. We fail as friends sometimes. We fail as spouses, parents, work, like as coworkers. It just happens, right? It's part of life. Some people are super critical of that and don't want to accept that as part of their life, because super high achievers, people who run really hot all the time, they have a hard time dealing with that. So, I mean, it's really easy to let certain things in life kind of, whether it's your job or it's a lot of times with guys, it's career, kind of drive you to, it kind of takes the wheel of your life and directs you in wherever you're going to go, right? Especially somebody who's in sales, if you travel and stuff, like it's kind of like it's me and the job, and this is what we're going to do. And you see people like that who are super high performers, who have a really solid, hard drive, and who can go and go and go and go. They can let their personal lives kind of like the sand through their fingers a little bit, and then they're like, man, I haven't called Jared in like 2 weeks, and he's like my best buddy, and I haven't checked in with my mom and or whatever, right? Because we get so focused on those goals. And the balance of so how do you balance that, right? How do you take away from one to give to the other, and what are we willing to let go? I think is the big challenge that people face, because I think if people face, like if I go out for like a weekend trip with the dudes and I take Monday and Friday off, like that's 2 days of work that I'm missing, where I could be achieving the goals that I've set for myself, and that's hard for people to do. I think one of the big things that I started to do is I did a couple the personality test things. I always kind of sometimes think they're a little bit of not a fraud, but a crutch for people, because you see people be like, well, like the Enneagram test. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Yeah, well, I'm an Enneagram 6, so I can just act like that all the time, and it's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's like it's kind of an immature way, but I think it does provide a little bit of an insight to your personality and the way that you tick. Like for me, on the strengths finders, like my number one strength is futuristic. And then I'm an Enneagram 5. I honestly really don't even know what that means, but what I did take from it is that I get overwhelmed easily by a lot of different tasks. I am not like a small in the details type person. I just can't keep that all. It's boring to me. It's not exciting. There's nothing fun within it. So I can, and I actually talk to my therapist about this stuff, about how to manage that. Like when I start to feel overwhelmed by kind of all the little tasks that start to build up, and I'm one or two is slipping here, I'm just like, that gives me anxiety, that gives me stress, right? That puts me in the position that you're in. And I've probably experienced that just this year alone 2 or 3 times, where it was like, okay, I'm starting to feel that heat. I'm starting to feel really overwhelmed. And that's when I just I just start saying no to stuff. Like, nope, sorry, I can't do it. And be like, oh, well, you always usually say yes. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not saying yes this time. I just need a little bit of time, even if it's like a day or two. That's what I tell my wife. Like, if I just get like an hour a day, just alone time, zone out, read a book, watch my show, like it's a huge mental reset for me. So I think the big part of balance is finding those things that do de-stress you, which doesn't include drugs and alcohol, over-exercising, overeating, under-eating, right? The unhealthy stress relief habits that people will develop to get through that stuff, and utilize them on a frequent basis. I think we get afraid because we feel that that's a weakness, right? Like, oh, I find something that makes me feel, it helps me relax a little bit and kind of take my foot off the pedal and not feel like I'm grinding myself out. Or because we do have to grind ourselves. It's a grind. I mean, it's, you hear the term grind all the time. And something, dude, like work in life, dude, it's a grind. Like when you look at all the stuff you got to do through a day as like a professional, it's a lot of stuff, man, and it can wear you down. And so I think finding a way to, I guess, come off of that grind for a little bit in a healthy way is super important. It's different for everybody, right? Like yours is probably much different than mine. It may be the same thing, but it could be completely different. How do we find that? That's a whole other question, I think, in and of itself. I think you got to do a lot of introspective examining of who you are, kind of. I mean, I think that's one of the things that helps me going through therapy is kind of finding out how my life has led up to this point and why I am the way that I am, right? Because your life shapes you. The events, the traumas, all the stuff that we go through shapes us and puts us on the defense or makes us happy versus somebody else. So I think digging into that really helps, and it helps you kind of, okay, this is why I feel this way in these situations. This is what's pushing me to do this, and how can I? Because sometimes just having that, I mean, you see therapists too, having that healthy, objective point of view can open up your eyes to a lot of different things.
Yeah, the one of the main things that he's told me, because I asked for his brutal honesty, even if it stings, is his feedback about what he sees from a professional standpoint. And one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, has been the self-critic. Mm-hmm. So there's a difference between being, critical and then just examining and then making a change, right? Yeah. And I wouldn't say that I have a proclivity towards negative talk. It's more that I hold myself to a level of discipline or a structure that is an extreme. I think I'm prone to order, and I really like things a certain way, and then I get it the way that I want it, and I'm doing it very structurally, where I get up and I do the same thing, and I go to work, and you have day after day after day after day after day of that, and then things start to kind of stack up against you, mm-hmm. and then the thing is that, like, when I look back at all the things that have fallen through, and again, these aren't tragic things, but it's
but it's important to you, man, right? That's
exactly,
that's what people need to understand sometimes, is that just because it doesn't seem like it's important to me doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on you. Mm. So while it might not be tragic to me, it still affects you in a very negative way. Mm.
Yeah, and fair point too, because when you isolate to kind of only a few specific endeavors, work would be one of the biggest. And then, you kind of see things fall through, or you see deals that don't go through. You're not really creating other areas that you can maybe not escape to, but pull from, right? Because you've narrowed your focus to I'll just do these things every day and whatever. And it's an unhealthy way of going about it. It's not balanced at all. And the interesting thing is that when I look back at what led me to here, they were all a result of a decision that I made somewhere. So it would be inappropriate for me to point the finger be. I mean, I can be upset about it, but and have my moment, but it would be inappropriate for me to place blame somewhere else because they were all a manifestation of a decision I made somewhere along the way. And it's important to recognize that, like, I contributed to this. You know, I participated in this, and I can also participate in my own rescue in this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's extreme.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to do. And, but it's important that the message be shared because, it can be very taxing.
Yeah.
And, when you shoulder a lot of responsibility and you take on a lot, probably more than you should, maybe more than you need to.
Yeah.
It's also not fair to you to do that. And, you're making it extremely hard on yourself, and you're creating expectations. You know, I think that it may be that too, is that I have some expectations that are almost unattainable. Right.
And when you say you're not talking about me, you're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure people understand.
Yeah. I have expectations that I create for myself that are unattainable. And falling short of those is hard to contend with. But, you know, not having the balance in our other outlets or letting go. You know, I've had moments like this in the past, and when I've decided at that point that I'm going to loosen my white knuckle grip, and I'm going to allow things to happen, to not have so much control over them. I wouldn't consider myself a control freak, but I like things in order and I like things a certain way. But then when I get them, I push things and potentially even people away by doing that. It's just a big challenge that I've had, and when I've experienced it in the past, I didn't do really much different in the way of activity. I mean, it was, of course it was slight, it was modifications, but in truth, it was more that I maybe emotionally let go, or I detached from an outcome, and then suddenly a space was created, or things kind of started to fall my way. I know that it's not always going to fall my way, but I almost kind of just like let go.
Yeah.
And allowed things to kind of manifest themselves rather than me trying to go in there and control it. It's almost hard to describe, and it's almost hard to it's hard to get out. I mean, it's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Because it's admitting that I have a huge weakness and a proclivity to this. But again, it would be foolish for me to come in here and say you should do this, this, and this, and you should dress this way, and you should be fashion and grooming, and when I don't have all my ducks in a row, because I think it's important to get your house in order before you start throwing stones at other people's and start giving advice. In my family, a lot of people come to me for advice. I consider myself the sage of our family, and then I come in here and I do the same thing, and I need to take the advice too, but that's the responsibility that I need to take. So that's probably more than you wanted to know. But
no, man. I mean, I think it's I mean, thank you for sharing all that, man. I mean, that's not easy. I think it's people are really. People don't like to do that because, again, they feel they're going to be judged by somebody else, right? You know, we sit in this room every couple of weeks and kind of chat and talk, and it's good, man. Like, you're a great dude. I wish we had more margin, like, just in our life to hang out and be buddies and get to know each other a lot better. Because I think you're an awesome guy. I think. You know, it is really tough, you know, as I go to church and I believe in God. That's my thing. I think when I hear you say, like, well, I just kind of let go, that's what, like, as Christians would refer to, like, just let God take the wheel. Like, let that spiritual aspect of your life, rely on that to kind of let things come together. It's kind of, if I were to relate it from a secular point of view, it would be the don't look down and in, look up and out, like the Jocko thing. Like, okay, I'm so hyper-focused on these areas right now, and it's burning me out. So I need to take a step back, look at the big picture of it all, see what else is maybe moving outside of my view, and is there anything else that I can just let happen. That's really hard to do, man, because then you are kind of taking your hands off of the problems that you're dealing with and letting things kind of fall into place a little bit. And sometimes, man, if it doesn't work, it might be for the best, right? But again, that's a really hard pill to swallow in that moment, right? Like, if that doesn't work out, if that deal doesn't go through, like, what if that deal would create 10 times more stress on your work life than if you didn't have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, man, it's really, really hard. I mean, I'm in a position where I just naturally can't take on more than I can. If I were single, dude, it would be, I would just never stop. Like with my job, I would travel all the time. I would never be in one spot. I'd probably work 6 days a week, 50, 60 hours a week working at night. Like, it's just because I enjoy what I do. I like the guys that I work with. I like the patients I take care of at Limitless Mail. And I want to be able to provide a place that is awesome, right? And that's kind of where that's where my drive comes from. So like, I get it, dude. And I just have a rate limiting step of the family, which thank heavens, it's probably a good thing for me, right? I mean, like, I love my wife and kids, wouldn't trade for anything. But I can feel that side of me sometimes kind of tug. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm getting a little too far away from the core of my life, and getting out into an area that's not unhealthy, but it starts to rob me of the things that kind of make up me and who I am and why I do what I do. It's yeah, man, life, work, all that stuff is just super challenging. It can just feel so relentless, without even being told that it's that way. Like, I think, especially in sales, right? A lot of the people I know who are in sales are very, I don't want to say emotionally driven people, but they thrive on that win, right? They get a sale. It is like, that's their high. That's their natural high. And so they grind. And when they lose that sale, that's like their depression. And so they kind of go through this high and low, week to week, day to day.
Exactly.
And it's brutal. I don't know how I couldn't do it. I would be so spun out. It would be out of control. I mean, like, it's really, 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 really hard to do.
Yeah, it's every year chasing a huge quota, and it's part and parcel of being in sales. I mean, that's what you accept, the responsibility of getting and obtaining and going through it in sales. But it's looking at that tall mountain, and then it's hard to unzip your identity or your worth in your attainment or lack of attainment in that goal. So just for some context, if you outsell your quota at the company I work for, if you outsell it by a certain margin, then you get to take a trip each year, and it's usually somewhere tropical. And
yeah, my wife she does sales too, so I see that from her too, and how hard it is on her. So I get it. I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah,
so.
It burns you out, and it is relentless. Especially the older you get, you kind of, I don't know if I got it in the tank, but
so sorry to cut you off. You get the trip and
no, you're good. So I had earned it 2 years ago, and then I had earned it last year, and they said we'll allow you to go for 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever. And as a means of not punishment, but as a means of disciplining myself, and because I'm not the best at rewarding myself, I declined to go, and that was this week. And I don't say that as a means of you should feel bad for me, because it was a decision that I made.
Yeah.
So I looked at this week thinking, okay, well, I declined to go this year, and I'm going to use this week to bust my ass. I'm going to close a lot of deals. I'm going to put my head down when everybody else is on the beach. I'm going to get ahead, and in every way possible that it could have backfired, it totally did.
Yeah, because that would be my first question too. Like, if we were sitting down having a beer, I'd be like, so what if that doesn't work out, bro?
Right.
Like, that would have been the first question I would ask you, like, as a friend.
Yeah. It's so accurate, because I was without internet at home for the better part of a day and a half.
And that's how you work. You have to.
Yes.
Yeah. When you go to the library?
Well, I could go into the office. I could go into the office, but I was just
okay.
losing time, and I got fixated on it. And it's like, okay, I got to get this fixed. So then once I finally got back on, I was behind, and then I was uncovering, no's and declines and no's. And then I got to a point where I got caught up, and then I'd start reaching out, and it was no's and declines and no's and declines. And I even no more than an hour before I got here or two, I was still experiencing them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. And now it's almost comical. I mean, almost because it has to be.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced some tyranny, I guess, if you will, the last week. But and I don't say that again as a means of you should feel bad that I didn't go to the beach.
Yeah.
It was more I have this proclivity towards I'm going to punish myself this week when everybody else is having a lot of fun because it's my way of getting ahead.
Yeah.
And it was stupid. And I'm the only one that paid the ultimate price for it because I saw all my friends and they were having a great time and they were posting pictures and they looked like they were having a ball. And some of them even closed deals while they were down there.
It's like self-flagellation.
I closed zero.
Yeah. That's brutal.
And it's not a pity party, but it's the reality. And it was a sign that, like, dude, have some balance.
Yeah.
Reward yourself for the efforts that you've done and achieved, and don't be so damn hard on yourself because it didn't afford you anything.
Yeah.
It completely backfired.
Yeah, and I think the other angle from that is like, so that the people that you work for designed a program to reward you for your hard work and success because they understand that it's one thing like, hey man, meet your quota, we'll give you $1,000 bonus. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool, right? But like, hey, we're going to spend like 10 G's to send you to this really awesome resort where you get to chill with other people that you work with, maybe from other regions, you connect, network, party. Like, it's huge, right? We got to do that for my wife's job. We got to go to Cabo. And it was awesome, man. Like, we had a great time. Like, all the people that she was there that she worked with were super cool. I got to meet like the president of their company, and like, he came up and was like, hey man, can I buy you a beer? And I'm like, sure. You should make it too, homie. But it was like super cool. And like for my wife, like that's huge for her because she's like, okay, I see not only the financial side, but like there's this, it was almost like a sign of gratitude from the people that she works with and works for, that they were like, hey, we appreciate everything you've done. Go have a heck of a time on us, and we want you to know that you can do it again next year if you're still doing really well. So I think some people just get caught up in the number, right? If I just got to hit that number, then I'll feel better about hitting the number than I will feel about going on the trip, right? And I think that's the difficult part about sales is, and sometimes it's not even about the money, right? It's just about the actual, like, look what I accomplished this.
Because you attach like I said, your value as a person, as a sales rep. Mm-hmm. I mean, even beyond a sales rep, you attach your worth to your attainment or not.
Yeah.
And I missed out entirely.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity to go down there and bond with people I didn't get to see last year.
Yeah.
And go and commiserate and hang out and have a good time. And I missed out entirely in more ways than just the sales. So I can't look to anybody else and say, wow, or play victim.
Yeah.
I have to be responsible for the decision I made.
Yeah. So what do you think, like you learned from it, from a personal and professional aspect? Like, you learned about that decision that you made to do that. How do you feel that that's affected you, changed you, what you learned from that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
And you don't have to answer that.
No, I'll be as transparent as possible. I did learn. I'm learning. Put it that way. I didn't. I'm always learning, or at least I hope to. I'm learning that I get in my way very easily, and that I don't have the best idea of how to reward or to treat myself. Anything in the extremes, if it's just hedonic pleasures all the time, it's like that's not going to do me any good either.
Yeah.
But I think that I have such a competitive drive. My therapist told me, he's like, you're super competitive, and I never thought that, and I don't think that I am with other people. I think I hold that against myself.
Yeah. Which
that can be good. You want to be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah.
That's great. But again, it's the idea that, like, you don't need to go on the trip, almost as a punishment, because you're going to work really hard and you're going to get ahead.
Yeah.
So that placing too much pressure on myself, way too much pressure. I mean, even in here, I mean, I come in here with notes. I really give a shit about what we do in here.
Yeah. You see me coming with like nothing.
No. It's not why I pointed that out.
No, I'm just saying, like, I think it's a difference in our personalities. I think
Yeah.
it's like most of the stuff that we talk about, I have known and studied so it's like easy for me to kind of rattle that off. But like, I'll kind of look at stuff and then I rely on the conversation to kind of take things where it is. Like you, trust me, we'd be so far off the rails in so many different topics if you didn't do that right. So that's, again, the benefit of it. So yeah.
It's I place a tremendous amount of pressure on myself to make sure that what comes out of our conversations is valuable. Mm-hmm. And I spend hours on the content and on the notes and trying to make sure that it's valuable. And I care deeply about it, not least because I think it can be helpful, but because it's always going to be attached to my name in some sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm always attuned to that. And it's that pedal to the metal all the time that I think, and that white knuckle grip on, it's got to be perfect and it's got to be a certain way and it's got to be, 100 miles an hour all the time. It's not a great recipe. And as a single guy, I'm 37. As a single guy, it's the outlets for dealing and coping with that are fewer and fewer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's important that I learn how to harness that. And I mention that because about halfway through this week, I kind of buckled under the amount of stress and just lack of performance. I kind of buckled. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like the person that came out. And I was speaking with a couple members of my family, and I didn't like what they saw.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to understand that if and when I'm called to lead a family and to be a beacon of strength and to be somebody that's looked to and relied upon, that I get stuff like what happened when I buckled under control. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm that way, then, and I'm the leader of a household and I'm supposed to be leading a family into the years to come, and that's how I conduct myself under stress, it's no way to be. And yeah. I need to get a grip on myself, honestly.
Yeah. It's hard, man. Yeah, it's hard to think about. That's a stressful situation to just not only be in, but to think about, man. It's really, really, I mean, you get it, right? I mean, there's an innate, natural, inborn skill in men, I think, to either want that or to be able to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think from what I hear you say, I think one of the things you learned is that, like, one, you need more margin and balance, and then two, just a little bit of reset of expectations, and kind of know when the red line is, and when you, and not only know it, but know how to pull back when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the overcriticalness of the self is good. It's good to take inventory, but the overcriticalness is bad. Mm-hmm. And I have a natural tendency to do that. I don't think that my negative self-talk is something that, at least not to my knowledge, something that I deal with. I know many people do, and I know how destructive that is. Yeah,
they use that as their engine, and
right.
It's I don't know how people do that, man. That's I couldn't function from that place. I just couldn't do it. I would crash and burn way too fast because I would just probably get really depressed and beat myself down and have the outlet of alcohol and other things to kind of take that stress off me.
Yeah, it's again with fewer and fewer outlets. I was so displeased with how I showed up and what my family, unfortunately, was a witness to, more my parents than anything, and God bless them for it. But my dad raised me to be better than that, and I actually saw much better examples of how he conducted himself under stress. Mm-hmm. He wasn't flawless, but I saw that the way that he conducted himself under stress, and he had mouths to feed, and he had a job to go to, and he had a wife to contend with, and a family to lead, and that the way that he conducted himself under stress, and the way that I did, at a very similar age, it just made me realize that instead of ignoring that, it's important that I actually look at how painful that is.
Yeah.
And actually confront it face on. I may not actually get the answer that I want, or ever get to the final result, but I have to get that under control.
Yeah.
Because it was really nasty. It was really piss and vinegar, and I mean it was like venom coming off of me.
Yeah, the part that you don't want to come out. I think one of the interesting things about like the generation of your dad, and us, is how we come up, right? Not like how we're raised by our parents, but like this. So I'm 37 too. So I think we're the most unique generation that has ever come to be, because we were alive in time of 8-tracks, and now we're in a time of talking about Neuralink, right?
Yeah.
Like that expanse of technology and connectedness to other people, which I think is a terrible idea, is like no other time in the history of the world, and probably never will be. We won't make those from like literally like I got to put a tape in, or I got to put a record in, to I can hit this button on my phone. I have more power in my hand and my phone than I did on a computer 10 years ago. Like that is a hard technological leap to take, and how it affects our brains, how it affects that we deal with people, our interconnectedness with people, how we communicate with people, and how it puts us on a 24-hour clock, right? A lot of guys back in your dad's time, they would go in and they would go home, and they generally would be done. They might have a little bit of homework to do when they get done, but like boss ain't going to call him on his cell phone. He's not answering emails. He doesn't, I mean, it's a completely different world than the expectations. And so in some sense, he may have a hard time relating to that with you, which is a challenge, because you're like, dang man, like if he can be empathetic and be there for you and support you, but it's a really hard, it's the age that we are growing up in is super challenging. And I don't think people understand that, or don't want to not hear that, but don't quite get like, really there's no other generation that has faced what we face in that transition from, okay, I could get away, but now I can't. Right. It's one thing to be like, I'm always on my phone. I'm all like, 17, 20-year-old kids, they have no other way, right? We remember a time when it was like, man, that phone ain't ringing after 9 because mom's going to throw that thing through the wall, right? But now you can kind of sit in your computer in your room, and like nobody knows. It's a completely different lifestyle. And what I'm trying to get at is that drives what you are experiencing, right? It drives that constant pedal to the metal. It almost doesn't allow you to unplug. Mm-hmm. And if you do, people think you're dead. Like, if you didn't answer your phone for like 2 hours from like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., do you think people would be like, Aaron's he went off the reservation, he's dead, like something really bad happened? Mm-hmm. That's the instant, because everybody's so connected. Mm-hmm. You should be connected to probably your parents or your significant other, right? So they can get a hold of you. But like, why are we being beholden to a coworker at 7:30 on a Sunday night? I mean, it's kind of crazy, right?
Yep.
But we do it almost welcome. We almost welcome it because we think that's what we need to do to be successful, when it's actually a destructive pattern that we fall into. And I mean, our brains need time to settle down. Yeah,
it's shouldering, I think, way more than when you need to, especially if you're trying to be a high performer. Mm-hmm. First of all, like you said, you have access and you're always accessible. And it's kind of expected for you to always be on, and not least because now it's like, okay, well, you're not always in the office now because of what happened last year. Mm-hmm. So there's almost like a ramping up of like, okay, you're at home, but like, we still need to make sure that you're performing. And I don't have any of that, at my own job, but yeah, you're exactly right. The times have totally changed. My dad worked the same. He's getting close to retirement. I mean, he's literally within a couple of weeks of retiring.
Oh man, good for him.
And he works Nucor. He's worked in the steel industry for, Jesus, I think he started there when he was 18.
Wow.
And he's in his early 60s.
And that is rare. Dude, like how many people do you know are at the same job that they were when they were 25?
Right.
Almost nobody.
Yes.
Unless they're like in a trade, or they started at like a really, really big company but dude, that's super rare now.
It's very rare. But that was a sign of the times. You got in and you stayed in, and then you got your pension and whatnot. And he's now contending with retiring because so much of his identity is wrapped up in working there.
It's hard, man.
And he gets up even to this day. I get up and we have this thing that our family, we're all on this app where we can kind of make sure that everybody's okay. And it's we can kind of see where everybody's at. It's like a car safety app thing.
Life 360.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
My family they'll love that you knew that.
Yeah. Life 360, hit us up.
Yes. It is actually a really good app.
It is. Yeah. I can't wait till my kids are the phone.
But I can see that he's, even to this day, 5:15, he's driving 30 miles there, 30 miles back, 30 miles there. He's doing that every single day.
Yeah.
And so he's having a hard time really finding out what life is going to be like outside of that.
Yep.
Even when he did that for all those years, he also ran a construction business on the side. He would work all night, and then he would take me to wrestling tournaments in Schuyler, Sioux City, or Lincoln or Omaha from Norfolk.
Yeah.
I don't know anything different than that. This is just how he was.
Yeah.
And I think, I come by it naturally and honestly.
Yeah, and it sounds like that was like an observed behavior, not something that was forced on you either, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't seem like that was something that your dad was like, you got to do this. Or
yes, fair point. Yeah, it was by methods of encouragement and because I observed what he did and what he accomplished.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was never, he never ruled with an iron fist. It was just something observable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, which is good, right? I mean, that's at least you've got because some people, man, their parents just hammer them, right? And you're going to be this or you're going to be that, and don't ever give them the agency to do what brings them happiness within their work.
Yeah.
So that's a positive. That's a good example of good fathership and good leadership, right, to a son. Now, your dad worked really hard, it sounds like, but he never made it seems like, well, you ain't gonna be like me. You ain't gonna get what you want, right? Because that's a terrible thing to put on somebody, right? Because then you're always gonna feel like you're never gonna live up to it, no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's intense. We live in an intense world, and I think it's really easy for people to deal that victimhood card out, like in the situation you're in. Well, like, woe is me. Look what I'm dealing with. It's this is not my fault. This is somebody else made me do this. This is not what I wanted to do, right? And I think it takes a lot of courage and strength to admit that take that extreme ownership of the situation of what you're doing, man. So I applaud that. I think we would be a lot better off if people were willing to do that. I just don't think people have the courage to. I think they're afraid that they're going to get judged, and that if they can put it on somebody else, then so be it. It's way easier to deal with, and you put the blame on them. I don't got to deal with it. You can let me go and live the easier life instead of trying to make the changes to correct that, right? And nobody wants to. I mean, it's really hard to look at yourself and be like, this is what's going on with me, and I got to make all these big changes to fix it, big or small. It takes a lot of work, man. It takes a long time too. It's not easy. That's why I go to therapy. It's why you do it. It's a long term. It's not like, all right, we got a graduation therapy date on September 5th. It's like, man, that's going to keep going, bro.
Yeah. I fully accept whatever judgment comes. That's fine.
Yeah.
I look at doing something like what we do here. I look at it as that I have two choices. Either one, I can stand there and say, boy, this is terrible. Somebody should do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, I could get involved and shoulder a load and get in and try and participate and do what I can to help.
Yeah.
And part of doing that is to show that I'm fundamentally as flawed as most people are.
Yep.
And that I don't have it all together too. And that it would not be wise to throw stones. But I'm okay with whatever judgment comes. Bring it on, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I mean that. My responsibility will be to myself is how much of that should I shoulder and how much of it do I keep in balance?
Yeah.
That's not mine to take.
Yeah, I think it's a huge ego check, and that's a really hard thing for people to do. Even when we talk about the victimhood folks, I mean, like their ego drives them to blame it on somebody else, because then they don't have to have their ego wounded to accept responsibility for the times they made the wrong decisions or pushed things too far or didn't do the right thing. So if I can just blame that on somebody else and I don't accept responsibility for it, like you're saying, bring it on. I'll take whatever lumps I'm going to get. People don't have the courage or the balls or the strength to do that because they're afraid of the outcome, when in reality, right, like most people respect what you're saying. And if they don't, then they don't have a lot of grace or forgiveness in their heart, or in their, however you want to put it. Like that's got to be a core tenet of somebody who is in any business, because people are always going to screw up. And if you just axe everybody who messes up, especially your high performers, and I mean, like, then you're just going to bury yourself. And so I think it's huge that you say that, man. I mean, I think it's super important. People don't understand. Just for you, that's cathartic and therapeutic to do that. People don't understand that once you kind of just go, yeah, I messed up, but like, I'm going to take what comes my way off of that, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to fix it.
Yep.
So kind of what do you have in your mind, and how you're going to kind of move forward, what you're going to do, how are you going to practice to make things better or to improve that?
I would say first and foremost, I would call on the people that are willing, and that will tell me directly that they can see that I'm becoming too orderly, or maybe I'm pushing too much.
Yeah.
So I would want people near me to hold me accountable, even if it stings, even if it hurts. I would rather know my blind spots. So I would kindly ask them to hold me accountable to that, because I think I have, in 37 years, clearly demonstrated that when left to my own decisions and my own choices, that I have a labyrinth and I can fall into the holes very easily if left to my own devices. So I think I need to be held accountable to making sure that things don't become too orderly. And then to just, take a break and to let the, I always think of the, in a semi truck, when they release the brakes, just that big,
yeah.
It kind of feels, it kind of let go a little bit, let things fall my way. I cannot be sold on it, but I liked what you mentioned about letting God take the wheel.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be fair to say that I have not been the best in terms of my spiritual path.
Yeah.
So,
and let's be clear, no one is. I mean, anybody who's like an honest, open, practicing Christian who is very transparent will tell you, like, dude, these are the times where I just like, you think that's bad? Let me hit you with this, right? And those are the people that you want to get in with, because they're not going to judge you, and they're going to walk with you. They're not going to drag you by your arms and take you where they want to go. They're going to lead you down your path through grace and forgiveness, and through that growth pattern, right? Because it's not, I mean, everybody always, the thing is like, if you're, it's surrounded by love and forgiveness, right? It's a core of Christianity, right? It's nothing else really matters. I mean, we could get into theology, and that's not what this podcast is about, but I think it's a good time to or a good point to talk about, like, if you can live from that, man, things are so much, not easier, but like, man, you can rally around a little bit of a tribe that we've talked about in the past,
right? Of
people that you can rely on, right? Like, I got a couple guys that I know that I could call, like, if anything happened, that they would just be like, dude, yep, I'll be there, man. My wife, we're basically second families. We'll drop what we got going on. We'll come over. We'll help you. We'll take care of you, right? And I think that's having that, again, that tribe, that community is important, which is kind of along the lines of the accountability portion that you said. But we need somebody to call us on that, but then somebody to help us with those things too.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially like if you said, if the blind spot, like, man, I didn't even know I was doing that. Like, how do I get through that? So
it would be fair. And the last thing that I'll say, because I want to be done with my sorrow story here.
No,
but
you're good.
The last thing is that I also need to be a better contributor to the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is that I also need to become more dependable to other people, not least because that's going to get me out of my own stuff. But I think in service of being there for other people, that will help me become the more dependable person that when I buckled the other night, I don't think I showed that I was as dependable as I could be, or as I should be, or as I need to be going forward. So I don't need to be in receive mode all the time. I need to be proactive, and I need to be in the contributing, in the giving service side of being a better friend, of being a more dependable friend.
Mm-hmm.
So,
have you read the book or heard of the book called The Miracle Morning?
No.
It's by a guy named Hal Elrod.
Okay.
Which I would kill to have this guy on this podcast. It's an amazing story of the power of gratitude and positivity. So I'll try to make it brief. He got into like a terrible car accident. Like, don't know how he lived or came out of it even like as a functioning human being. Months and months of rehab and different types of things and surgeries and so on and so forth. And he was kind of, I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I think he kind of battled with depression and all these different things. And so, and I'm very much contextualizing this. So he started waking up early in the morning. Like, I think he's like a 4:30 type of guy, and he follows this little mnemonic, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically talking about how he does some light exercise in the morning. He does a little bit of journaling, and he does a big thing of like gratitude. Like, I am thankful to be alive today. I am thankful for my family and my friends. I'm thankful for just the day today, right? To be able to go out and breathe the air and go to work with the people that I get to work with, right? Seems kind of corny, a little cheesy or disingenuous, but if you can practice that and do it in reality, man, you'd be surprised at because it opens up your eyes to the things in your life that you should be really grateful for.
Probably opens up your heart too.
Yeah,
and then let's be fair.
Then the dude got cancer, like stage 4 cancer, and he's still like giving talks about this stuff, and he's still alive, and he has a podcast, and like his ability to generate positivity through gratitude and this kind of morning routine that he does, it's mind blowing, and how you can see like, yeah, if I really did do that, I'd probably be a lot better off, and I would know. I would be more grateful for all the things that I have and the things that I can do, the people around me, and how I can manage, kind of like go through my kind of daily to-do list right when I wake up and kind of like prioritize, okay, these are the things I got to get done. These are the things that I should get done, but could maybe wait if I got to get overwhelmed with stuff. The stuff that I got to do, like I got to schedule a haircut. It can wait till tomorrow, right? And it kind of in the way he just talks about it and prioritizing and not taking the small things too seriously. I think it kind of helps people mentally categorize and prioritize things so they don't overwhelm themselves. Like, I got 50 things to do on my to-do list, and they're all number one, mm-hmm. right? I think that would be helpful. I think I would recommend reading it. Do you volunteer?
No. That's another thing too, is that it's clear that all the efforts and all this stuff and all this pedal to the metal stuff is all for me.
Yeah.
And that's pretty self-involved. And I need to get in service.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most underrated things that people can do, obviously for other people, right? But there is a little bit of a selfish thing in there. When you go and you give people something, which things very important to us are our time and our money, right? And you give people your time and your money with no expectation of getting anything back, right? You have to go into it that way. You're like, I'm just going to go from, I want to help people. Whether it's like, we're going to go to like North Omaha and clean up a park, or we're going to pick up trash, and we're going to clean up people's lawns, right? We're going to come out and say, hey, how you doing, man? I'm Aaron. It's good to meet you. I'm so happy to be here for you. We're just going to do some stuff here. Is there anything else that you need me to do today for you? Oh, yeah. Well, could you possibly move that thing? And then you do it. And then they're like, oh, man, thank you so much. I didn't know I was going to get that done. You're just like, dang, that puts you it really does put you at a 10 in a place that a lot of people aren't used to going.
Right.
And it's awesome. I'd recommend doing. I'm not saying I'm like hey man, I volunteer every week, bro. No, that's not me. But like, when I do, it is, it's like if you saw somebody who was standing on the side of the road and they need $10 in gas money, and you gave it to them, and you could just see that you just saved their day, right? And you're like, oh, it's no problem, right? I mean, that feels really good, doesn't it? Or if you help somebody, like you see your neighbor is struggling with something, you go over and help them move something, and the gratitude that they give you of like, dude, I didn't know how I was going to get that done. Like, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And you're just like, it's all good, bro. Like, those little things fill up your tank in a way that a lot of other things can't. The material side of the world that we live in, how it can't. So I would highly recommend just looking into some basic volunteering. You don't need to go to like the Francis House and scoop soup and stuff like that. There's lots of cool stuff you can do for adults, for kids, for everything, man, that I think would be a big mover for you in a personal way that not a lot of other stuff I think can move that needle for you.
Yeah, no, point taken. Yeah. I appreciate sharing it.
Yeah.
That's all I had. And again, I kind of threw the guys for a loop today because we were supposed to have this grooming and style, which we will do, and I'm quite verbose in, let's say. But I just felt like it was honest to come and just speak from the heart and to share a good message. Hopefully it was a good message. And hopefully you guys got something else. I just don't want people to take that it's good to want things and it's good to want to attain good goals. And that can really serve you well, but it's also important to be good to yourself. And to have some grace with yourself.
Yeah. I think it's, again, I think it's super courageous. And I don't take it as like this was a podcast about you coming needing to just vent. I think it's a good example of recognizing a problem, and trying to find a way to turn and realizing it's a weakness, right? And then trying to turn that weakness into a strength for yourself so you can be better in other aspects of your life. And then you don't have to face that again, right? Because you see it all the time. People just continue to step on those landmines, and they'll reset and lick the wounds and come back and drive into it again and just ram right into that wall. And then they'll just think like, well, there's a wall in front of me. There's only one way through it, and it's, there's only one way. It's just through it. When I'm not going to find a way to go over it, I'm not going to find a way to go around it. I'm just going to headlong into it, right? And generally, you hurt yourself and you hurt others, and people find that as a strength, which is odd to me. But I appreciate that. I think it's huge, and I think if anybody kind of takes it as like, well, this is just Aaron's episode, then you don't get it, right? You don't get it. You don't understand what the goal of the podcast was. You don't understand that you probably have that same issue in your life, but you're not willing to accept it and deal with it. And I'm comfortable saying that. Everybody wants whatever, bring it on, right? Like, I mean, it's true, right? Like, I'm more than willing to have that conversation with anybody.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. You helped me out today.
Anytime, brother.
Yeah. And that's all we had. So we appreciate you tuning in. And again, have some grace for yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning into the episode, guys. We appreciate you listening. Do us a favor, if you would hit the like button below and subscribe. You can also hit the little bell. That'll send you a notification when we post a new episode. In addition, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, shoot us an email at hosts, that's plural, HOSTS, at menexplainedpodcast.com, or go check out menexplainedpodcast.com. Do us a favor, just share this with anybody you think that they would like it. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you next time.